The number 96 is probably most famous for being the backwards version of another number. But who were the best players to ever wear the number 96? Well, today, that's exactly what we plan to find out. Why the hat all of a sudden, you ask? It's been months now since I've had a haircut for good reason, but this is too much ginger hair even for me. But back to finding the best player to ever wear the number 96. Actually, no, there's one more thing before we get to the honorable mentions. As we go through this, you might be wondering, where's Pavel Bure? Well, I do want to keep these lists, as I said in the first video, to players that spent at least a decent chunk of their career wearing the number, not just someone that spent 2 years of a long career wearing it. And so with that said, we are ready for a couple of honorable mentions. First is Tomas Holmstrom. And although he does just have 530 points over 15 years of being a forward for the Detroit Red Wings, anybody who plays over 1,000 games in the NHL, not to mention being on 4 Stanley Cup winning teams, is well worth a mention. Second is Gary Walker, who had 433 tackles and 43.5 sacks in his 11-year career in the NFL, plus was voted to 2 Pro Bowls and was a one-time second-team All-Pro. But one of the most unique things about Walker's career in particular was that he played on both Houston franchises, starting his career with the Oilers and finishing it with the Texans. Starting off our list at number 5, we have Miko Rantanen, who, in spite of having only played a few years in the NHL to this point, all with the Colorado Avalanche, he still has 250 points on 99 goals and 151 assists. Rantanen has only been in the NHL for 5 years now, and even at that, after having been drafted 10th overall by the Avalanche in 2015, he only played 81 minutes across 9 games in his first season, without even scoring a single point. In his first full season with the Avalanche, though, the very next year, he played pretty well, and although he just had 38 points, he still averaged 18 minutes per game over 75 games played in that season. But it was years 3 and 4 of his career that he really started to pick things up, scoring more than a point per game in each season, with 84 points in 81 games of the 17-18 year, and then an 87-point season in just 74 games in the 2018-2019 campaign. And again, although his career hasn't been that long to this point, and this last season was a bit of a down year for him even with the shortened season, not to mention the fact that he has been for most of his career overshadowed by McKinnon in Colorado, Rantanen is still a very solid young player that has seen some sustained success in the time he has been in the NHL, even going to 1 All-Star game. So part of this is that I do see a bright future ahead of Rantanen in his career, and to be fair, there also just aren't a ton of players that have had great careers wearing the number 96. But there are a few. At number 4, Adalius Thomas. In his career, Thomas had 523 tackles and 53 sacks, with 82 tackles for loss in his 10 seasons. The Ravens drafted Thomas with the 186th overall pick in the 6th round of the 2000 NFL Draft, and like most players from the later rounds of the draft, he didn't see a whole lot of playing time in his first season in the NFL. But considering that a lot of players from those rounds don't even end up making the team, the fact that he ended up having a 10-year career is pretty impressive in and of itself. The next year in 2001, though, he started to see a significant increase in playing time, playing in all 16 games and even starting 3 of them. And by 2002 and 2003, he was starting more games than not. And even if he wasn't a full-time starter just yet, he still did manage to show enough to make the Pro Bowl in the 2003 NFL season. And by 2004, with full-time duties locked down, the 3 years that followed, he would put together 8, 9, and 11 sack seasons, with more than 200 tackles total between them, all culminating in his second Pro Bowl appearance in 2006, and his first-team All-Pro recognition. After his 2006 campaign, though, he would leave in free agency to join the New England Patriots, where he would play the last 3 seasons of his career. 3 seasons that would see a steady decline in productivity in each year, only exacerbated by a season-ending arm injury that would cut his 2008 year almost in half. His time in New England, and really his career, would end with a somewhat tumultuous final season, one that saw him benched more than once for disciplinary or motivational reasons, although he felt that that kind of stuff was for kindergartners, and in case you were wondering, he was not a kindergartner. And I suppose it is also fair to mention that he does have a Super Bowl ring to his name, but that did come in his rookie season with the 2000 Baltimore Ravens. Again, a season which he only played in 3 games and didn't play in the Super Bowl, so I didn't really factor that in much into this list. At number 3 I have Carlos Dunlap, who so far has 472 tackles, 81.5 sacks, and 101 tackles for loss in the 10 years he's played for the Bengals. Taken in the second round with the 54th overall pick in the 2010 draft, it took Dunlap 3 seasons of steady improvement to finally earn a regular starting role in Cincinnati's defensive line. In spite of that though, across those 3 seasons, he still did put together 20 tackles, including 9.5 in his rookie season, which that year was most on the team and set a franchise record for most sacks by a rookie. And in the so far 7 seasons since earning the starting role, he has not slowed down, at least in the sack category, with at least 7.5 sacks in each of those 7 seasons. Easily his best year though, at least as far as sacks are concerned anyway, came in 2015, when he had 13.5 sacks. And although he hasn't quite reached those totals since then, he did find new and creative ways to cause trouble in the passing game, when the very next season he had 15 passes defended, which is second all-time in a single season by a defensive lineman, second only to J.J. Watt's 16 in 2012. Plus, both of those performances in 2015 and 2016 were good enough to earn him back-to-back trips to the Pro Bowl. And although he's never been quite near the top of the league in tackles, and although those are so far his only 2 trips to the Pro Bowl, these 2 seasons are no exception as far as him causing havoc in the passing game, as he does have 81.5 sacks total in his career so far, which is nothing to scoff at. And his 58 passes defended are 6th all-time by defensive linemen. And although at this point the Bengals are truly terrible, he should be able to still get respectable numbers over the last couple of years and increase those totals, as he is playing on the same defensive line as Geno Atkins, who can distract at least some of the attention away from him. Drafted by the Eagles in 1986 with the 233rd overall pick in the 9th round, back when there were 12 rounds of the NFL draft, Simmons had to fight to even play 1 season in the NFL, much less 15. But by the very next year, in 1987, he was already a full-time starter, eventually starting every game in an 8-year span from 1988 to 1995. And as the Eagles improved over those first few years behind young star quarterback Randall Cunningham, so did Simmons, who improved in each of his first 4 seasons in tackles and sacks, eventually culminating in a 15.5 sack season and a career-high 135 tackles in 1989. But his best years were yet to come. After a bit of a down year, at least for him, in 1990 with just 7.5 sacks, in 1991 he would have a 13-sack year with 115 tackles. And then in 1992, he would become just the 9th player in NFL history to have 19 sacks in a single season, which was easily the most in the NFL that year. His performance in both of those seasons were not only good enough to earn him his 2 trips to the Pro Bowl, but also earned him back-to-back recognitions as a first-team All-Pro. In 94, Simmons would leave the Eagles to go play for the Cardinals, and in 95, in his second season with Arizona, he would have his 4th and final double-digit sack season, even leading the league with 6 forced fumbles in that year. And eventually, after 5 more seasons in Jacksonville, Cincinnati, and Chicago that saw a steady decline statistically for him, he would retire after the 2000-2001 NFL season. And although, like I said earlier, he is now 21st on the all-time sacks list, at the time of his retirement, he was just outside of the top 10 at number 11. At number 1, and I'll be honest, once again, this was a pretty easy choice, it's defensive tackle Cortez Kennedy. In his 11 seasons playing in the interior of Seattle's defensive line, he had 669 tackles and 58 sacks. Drafted 3rd overall by the Seahawks in 1990, he would play in all 16 games of his rookie year, but would start only 2. Although by the next year he was a full-time starter and would go on to start every one of the 151 remaining games of his NFL career. That 1991 season would also see him start to establish himself as one of the best defensive tackles in all of the NFL. With 6.5 sacks and 73 tackles from the middle of the defensive line, he would also earn in just his second season his first trip to the Pro Bowl and a second-team All-Pro recognition. But that 91 season pales in comparison to what he did just the next year in 1992, when, in spite of being on a truly awful 2-14 Seattle Seahawks team, he still managed 14 sacks, which did lead the team, and 92 tackles, which was second only to free safety Eugene Robinson, who had 94. It was a performance that was not only good enough for his second consecutive Pro Bowl appearance and his first Team All-Pro nomination, but also earned him the 1992 Defensive Player of the Year award, which is one of the awards that any NFL fan can tell you is not easy to win when you're on maybe the worst team in the league. And although the 92 season would prove to be the best of his career, he did not slow down all that much, continuing to dominate the NFL, being recognized as a first-team All-Pro in 1993 and 94, and then a second-team All-Pro in 96, and would finish his 11-year career having been to the Pro Bowl 8 times. Finally, his career with the Seahawks would come to an end after the 2000 NFL season. And then, in spite of numerous offers to make a return from other teams, he would turn them all down, wishing to remain a lifelong Seahawk, and would officially retire in 2002. Cortez Kennedy was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2012, and later that very same year had his number 96 retired by the Seattle Seahawks at halftime of a game against the New England Patriots. Incidentally, that was the very same game that a lot of people look to as the breakout game in the career of a certain, at the time, rookie quarterback, and also a game that ended with this beauty. Sadly, in 2017, Kennedy died at the age of 48 with heart issues, but not before having left his mark forever on the Seattle Seahawks organization and the game of football as a whole. To this day, he is still recognized as one of, if not the best defensive tackle that ever played the game, and is certainly the best player to ever wear the number 96. As always, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please do hit that thumbs up down below. If you really liked it and want to see more like what some of the other numbers have in store, the subscribe button will help you out with that. And if you think I missed a player or you want to add to any of the ones that I included on this list, please do leave that down in the comment section below. Otherwise, I hope to see you next time. Stay safe out there and be good to each other. Peace!